I was standing in the middle of our living room, surrounded by the echo of laughter that wasn't even mine. It was hers, Emily's, in the shrill, mocking giggles of her friends. My fingers tightened around the glass of whiskey I had poured myself, my jaw clenching as I replayed her words in my head. "He's just my roommate," she had said, waving her manicured hand dismissively, a smirk playing on her lips. The room had erupted in laughter. I had been sitting there, right next to her, my presence nothing more than a joke for her to toss around like some cheap punchline. I watched as she soaked in the attention, reveling in the way her friends cackled and gasped. It was a performance to her, another scene in the sitcom of her life where I was just an extra, silent, insignificant, and completely disposable. The worst part? This wasn't even the first time. I should have seen this coming. The way she had started rolling her eyes when I spoke. The way she'd brushed past me in the hallway like I was an inconvenient piece of furniture. How she never introduced me with pride anymore, just vague, casual indifference. It had been building up for months, maybe even years, but this was the moment I knew I was done. My blood ran cold. I wasn't even angry, not in the way I should have been. I wasn't going to yell or demand an apology. That would have been giving her too much importance. Instead, I sat back, swirling the whiskey in my glass, letting the conversation move on without me. I watched her laugh, watched her flip her perfect blonde hair, watched her bathe in the attention that she so desperately craved. And in that moment, I made a decision. Not a single word left my mouth as I finished my drink, set the empty glass on the table, and excused myself. She barely noticed, too wrapped up in her world of validation and empty praise. But that was the last night she would ever get to treat me like that. Because by the time she came home tomorrow, I wouldn't be here. I barely slept that night. Not because I was second-guessing my decision, but because my mind was already planning every step. Emily had no idea that her roommate was about to disappear from her life without so much as a goodbye. She'd wake up tomorrow expecting everything to be the same, expecting me to still be there, still orbiting around her like some loyal, voiceless shadow. Not this time. At dawn, I moved with precision. Every motion was deliberate. No anger, no hesitation, just quiet, calculated efficiency. I took only what was mine. I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of broken picture frames or a melodramatic farewell letter. That wasn't me. I had spent years being the steady, dependable one, the man who always picked up the pieces after her reckless decisions. But now, I wasn't here to clean up anymore. I packed my bags in silence, the early morning light casting long shadows across the bedroom, our bedroom. Except it had never really felt like mine. It had become hers, a place I merely occupied, tolerated but not welcomed. I moved to my office, where my real life existed, the one I had built for myself outside of her spotlight. My laptop, my work files, my personal records, I gathered them all. I had long since learned to keep my finances separate, a quiet precaution against the storm I had always felt coming. I left the joint account untouched. Let her keep it. Let her pay the bills she always assumed would magically take care of themselves. By the time I was done, the apartment looked the same as it always had. No dramatic emptiness, no visible gaps. Just small, unnoticed absences. The missing toothbrush. The silent space in the closet where my suits once hung. The now empty valet tray where I used to toss my keys and watch. Would she even notice at first? Or would it take her a few days, maybe a week, before she finally felt the weight of my absence? I took one last look around. The couch where we used to sit together, before she started sitting at the opposite end, scrolling through her phone, responding with half-hearted hums to anything I said. The kitchen table where we used to have dinner, before she started eating in front of the TV, laughing at her own Instagram stories instead of talking to me. The mirror in the hallway where she would always check her reflection before leaving, except lately, she didn't even glance at me before walking out the door. No note. No text. No final words. I didn't owe her a single damn thing. With my bags in hand, I stepped out of the apartment for the last time. And I left Emily exactly where she had always wanted to be, alone in the world she had built for herself. The morning air was crisp as I stepped outside, my bags in hand, and for the first time in years, I felt light. No weight pressing down on my shoulders, no suffocating expectation to be something for someone who only saw me as a prop in her perfect little world. I tossed my bags into the trunk of my car and slid into the driver's seat. My phone buzzed. Work emails, calendar reminders, the usual noise of my life. But not a single message from Emily. Not yet. She had no clue. She would wake up, maybe groggy from last night's wine, stretch her arms across the empty bed, and assume I was just in the kitchen or the shower. It would take her a few minutes, maybe more, before she noticed something was off. Maybe she'd check her phone, scrolling through meaningless texts from her equally vapid friends, laughing at their shallow conversations before it hit her. The apartment would be too quiet. No sounds of me making coffee. No rustling of papers from my office. No background noise of my morning routine that she had long since started ignoring. Then she'd start looking. She'd call out my name, expecting me to answer like I always did. Her voice would echo back at her. By the time she walked into the closet and saw the empty space where my clothes once were, the slow realization would start to crawl up her spine. She would check the bathroom, my toothbrush, gone. My cologne, gone. Her stomach would twist. Then she'd go for her phone. That's when it will hit her. I imagined her scrolling through our messages, seeing nothing new. Checking missed calls, none. Her fingers would tighten around her overpriced phone, her breathing a little quicker now, her mind racing. Her heart would skip a beat as she called me. The first ring would feel normal. The second, maybe just an inconvenience. By the third, a sliver of panic would creep in. By the fourth, she'd realize. And then, when the call went to voicemail without a single ring, that's when she would know. I started the car, gripping the wheel with steady hands. I had no destination, no grand plan, just an instinct pulling me away from the life I had spent too long convincing myself was worth saving. Emily had spent years making me feel invisible. Now she would finally understand what it felt like. I drove without thinking, letting the city fade behind me as I crossed over into the quiet outskirts. The morning traffic was just beginning, people rushing to jobs they probably hated, stuck in routines they couldn't escape. But I wasn't stuck anymore. I was free. The silence in the car was almost eerie, a stark contrast to the chaos that would be unraveling back at the apartment. I wondered how long it had taken her to realize. Had she found my side of the closet empty yet? Had she checked the bathroom? Had she scrolled through our messages, refreshing the screen, expecting to see something, anything? A part of me wanted to turn my phone back on just to watch it happen, to see the flood of texts, the frantic missed calls. But I didn't. I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. Not yet. Instead, I pulled into a quiet diner on the side of the highway. It was a small place, one of those old-school diners with faded red booths and a waitress who looked like she had seen it all. A sign above the counter read, "Best coffee in town," though I doubted that was true. I took a seat by the window and ordered black coffee and eggs. Simple. No expectations, no conversations filled with forced laughter or thinly veiled insults. As I stirred sugar into my cup, I imagined Emily pacing the apartment, her phone gripped so tight her knuckles were white. She had probably tried calling me by now, maybe even a few times. Then she would have called her friends. "Have you seen Samuel?" she'd ask, her voice tinged with confusion, but not panic. Not yet. And at first, they'd laugh. "Oh, please, he's probably just cooling off somewhere. You know how guys get when they're moody." He wouldn't actually leave. But as the hours passed, as their texts went unanswered, as call after call went straight to voicemail, that's when the cracks would start to show. Emily, the queen of control, the master manipulator, the woman who always had the upper hand, would realize she had lost it. By lunchtime, she'd be furious. By evening, she'd be desperate. And by night, she'd be alone. I took a slow sip of my coffee, staring out the window as the sun climbed higher in the sky. The weight in my chest had lifted. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for her next insult. I wasn't bracing for the next sarcastic remark, the next eye roll, the next reminder that in her world, I was just a roommate. No. Now, she was the one waiting. The first message came through at noon. My phone was still off, but as soon as I powered it up to check my work emails, it vibrated violently against the diner table. I took another sip of coffee and unlocked the screen. Emily, 12:04 p.m. Where are you? I smirked. No hey. No good morning. Just a direct demand. Classic Emily. I let the phone sit there, face up, as I finished the last bite of my eggs. The screen dimmed, then lit up again. Emily, 12:10 p.m. Sam, seriously? The impatience was already setting in. I could practically hear her voice in my head, slightly annoyed, but not yet panicked. She still believed this was some childish stunt, that I was just sulking somewhere like an inconvenience instead of a husband she had humiliated in front of an audience. Then, another one. Emily, 12:15 p.m. Are you ignoring me? The shift had begun. I leaned back in the booth, watching a couple in the corner laugh over their plates of pancakes, their hands brushing every few seconds as they talked. It was the kind of intimacy Emily and I hadn't shared in years, the kind I had convinced myself I could live without. Another buzz. Emily, 12:22 p.m. Okay, WTF. You're not at work. Your stuff is gone. What the hell is this? Oh, now she knew. I could imagine her storming through the apartment, checking every room, opening drawers that used to hold my things, yanking open the closet doors only to be met with the empty space where my suits once hung. She'd check the bathroom, see the blank spot on the counter where my razor had been. She'd pace. Her perfect little world, where she made the rules, where she controlled the narrative, was slipping between her fingers, and she hated it. The next messages came fast, one after another. Emily, 12:30 p.m. Are you seriously leaving like this? No note. No conversation. Emily, 12:31 p.m. This is so fucking dramatic, Sam. Emily, 12:33 p.m. You're embarrassing yourself. I laughed under my breath. I'm embarrassing myself? That was rich, coming from the woman who had made a joke out of our marriage in front of her friends. And then, just like I knew she would, she tried a different angle. Emily, 12:40 p.m. Baby. Let's talk. I didn't mean it like that. It was just a joke. I stared at the message, feeling nothing. Baby. A word she hadn't used for me in months, maybe years. She was scrambling now, trying to regain control, to fix it before it became real. But it was real, and she was going to feel every second of it. I slid my phone back into my pocket, tossed some bills on the table, and walked out of the diner. I wasn't going to reply. Not yet. Let her wait. By the time I checked my phone again, Emily had completely unraveled. The afternoon messages had started with false confidence, an attempt to act like she still had control. Then came irritation, then frustration, then outright panic. Emily, 1:15 p.m. You're being ridiculous. Emily, 1:45 p.m. You're not answering my calls. Why? Emily, 2:30 p.m. Okay, seriously, where the hell are you? People are asking about you. I don't know what to tell them. Ah, there it was. The part that truly mattered to her, the optics. Emily didn't care that I was gone. She cared about what it looked like. She cared that she had to explain to people why her husband had vanished. That, for the first time in years, she had no control over the story. But it got better. Emily, 3 p.m. Did you seriously take all of your stuff? Emily, 3:01 p.m. Wait. Did you move out? I chuckled under my breath, sitting in my hotel room, watching the screen light up with every frantic attempt she made to reel me back in. She wasn't asking because she missed me. She was asking because the reality was hitting her in real time. She had spent so long treating me like an accessory to her life that the idea of me actually leaving had never even crossed her mind. She had assumed I would always be there. I didn't respond. Then, the switch flipped. Emily, for PM you were such a coward. Emily, for 05 p.m. you're punishing me for one joke? Grow up. Emily, for 20 p.m. you're overreacting, Sam. This is insane. Anger. Desperation disguised as rage. She didn't know how to handle being ignored. She was used to controlling conversations, steering them how she wanted. But now, I wasn't engaging. I wasn't feeding her need for conflict, for drama, for a grand reconciliation where she'd get to be the victim or the misunderstood wife. I let her spiral. By the time evening rolled around, her messages took a final, pathetic turn. Emily, 7 p.m., I didn't mean it like that. You know that. Please just call me. Emily, 7:15 p.m., Sam? Emily, 8 p.m., I don't know what to do. Just talk to me. Good. I stood by the hotel window, looking out at the city lights, sipping on the same brand of whiskey I had left behind on our apartment counter. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was the one in control. And she? She was finally learning what it meant to lose something she thought she could always take for granted. The silence must have been killing her. For years, I had always been there, always answering, always smoothing things over, always playing the role of the dependable, steady husband while she basked in the spotlight. She could make her jokes, throw her little barbs, dismiss me in front of her friends, and I would let it go. Because that's what I did. But not this time. This time, she had to sit in the emptiness she created. I leaned back on the hotel bed, my phone face up on the nightstand, the screen lighting up in rapid bursts as she sent message after message. Emily, 9 p.m., this isn't funny anymore. Emily, 9:20 p.m., Sam. Please. Emily, 9:45 p.m., where are you? Are you at a hotel? Are you at your brother's? Just tell me where you are. Emily, 10 p.m., I don't understand why you're doing this. I scoffed. She doesn't understand. She had humiliated me in front of a room full of people. She had stripped me of my dignity with a laugh and a casual flick of her wrist, treating me like I was nothing more than a background character in her story. And now, when the consequences had finally arrived, she didn't understand. Then, as I expected, she played her final card. Emily, 10:30 p.m., are you leaving me? Is that what this is? There it was. Not anger. Not indifference. Fear. Because, for the first time, it wasn't me chasing her. It wasn't me fighting to fix things, to have a conversation, to make sure we were okay. I let her stew in it. At 11 p.m., the call started again. She had been resisting all day, trying to maintain some illusion of control by sticking to texts. But now, she needed to hear my voice. I watched the phone ring. Decline. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Decline. She tried FaceTime. Decline. I could picture her pacing the apartment, probably sitting on that pristine white couch she had insisted on getting. Maybe she was gripping a glass of wine, staring at her phone, waiting for my name to pop up with a response. But it wouldn't, because I was done being at her beck and call. At midnight, one final message came through. Emily, 12 a.m. I miss you. I smirked, setting the phone down beside me. I bet she did. The next morning, I woke up to 23 missed calls and a barrage of desperate texts. Emily had officially lost it. Her messages weren't structured anymore. No carefully crafted attempts at control, no strategic guilt-tripping. Just raw, unfiltered panic. Emily, 2:14 a.m. I can't sleep. Are you really gone? Emily, 3:07 a.m. I called your office. They said you took the day off. Where are you? Emily, 4:32 a.m. Samuel. Answer me. Emily, 5:55 a.m. I'm sorry, okay? I was being stupid. You know how I get around my friends. I wasn't thinking. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything. She had mocked me, degraded me in front of an entire room full of people, made a joke out of our marriage, and now she expected me to believe it was nothing? That she had just forgotten to treat me with basic human decency? It was almost insulting how little effort she put into her excuses. I sat up in bed, rubbing my jaw as I scrolled through the rest. Emily, 6:30 a.m. I don't know what to tell people. My mom is asking if we had a fight. My producer asked why you weren't at my event last night. Everyone is asking questions, and I don't know what to say. There it was again. Not I miss you or I love you. No concern for how I felt, for why I left. She only cared about how it looked. I tossed the phone onto the bed and let out a slow breath. I had spent so many years in her shadow, enduring her passive-aggressive jabs, watching her soak up attention like a drug while treating me like an afterthought. But now, The attention was on her for all the wrong reasons. I could already imagine the whispers among her friends. Why did Samuel leave? Did he find someone else? Did he finally get tired of her bullshit? Because that was the part she couldn't handle. Not the loss, the humiliation, and I wasn't going to save her from it. The phone buzzed again. Another call. I stared at the screen, my finger hovering over decline. And then, I answered. I didn't say anything at first. Just let the silence stretch. On the other end, I heard a shaky breath. Samuel? Her voice was small, weak, like she had never sounded before. I said nothing. Are you coming home? I let the silence linger just long enough for her to feel it. Then, finally, I spoke. No. And then I hung up. The moment I hung up, I exhaled slowly, staring at the phone in my hand. No. One simple word, yet it carried the weight of years of neglect, humiliation, and quiet resentment. Emily had spent our entire marriage assuming I would always be there, that I would tolerate every slight, every dismissive glance, every cruel little joke she made at my expense. But now? Now, she was staring at a reality where I wasn't hers anymore. And I could feel it. She was unraveling. The phone buzzed again almost immediately. Emily, 7:05 a.m. What do you mean, no? I didn't answer. Emily, 7:10 a.m. You're my husband. You can't just leave like this. Can I? I took my time getting dressed, feeling more in control than I had in years. Every move I made was deliberate. No rush, no panic, no obligation. Just me. By the time I was out of the hotel and back on the road, the messages kept coming. Emily, 7:30 a.m. You're really doing this? You're really just walking away? Emily, 7:45 a.m. You're a selfish bastard. After everything I've done for you, this is how you treat me? I laughed. Everything she had done for me? This woman had spent years treating me like an accessory, a prop in her perfect public image. She had used me for stability while she chased attention. And now that I wasn't there to serve as her safety net, she was lashing out like a child who had lost their favorite toy. Emily, 8 a.m. Fine. You want to be a coward? Be a coward. I don't need you. And there it was. The moment she realized she wasn't getting me back, she flipped the script. Now she had to pretend it was her choice, that she was still in control, that losing me didn't actually matter. I turned off my phone. Emily had spent years disrespecting me, treating me like I was disposable. Now, she was about to find out what it really meant to be left behind. I didn't turn my phone back on for the rest of the day. No texts, no calls, no pathetic attempts at control disguised as anger or desperation. Nothing. And it felt damn good. For years, I had been the one waiting for her to come home, waiting for her to remember I existed, waiting for her to treat me like I was more than just some silent figure standing in the background of her life. Now, it was her turn to wait. By the time I checked into a new place, a fully furnished apartment downtown, far from the suffocating ghost of our old life together, I knew exactly what she was doing. She was checking her phone every 10 minutes. She was pacing, furious, confused, and, most importantly, alone. And the best part? She had no idea where I was. She had spent so long assuming I'd always be there, orbiting her like a planet around the sun, that she never even considered what it would be like if I disappeared. Until now. That night, I finally turned my phone back on, just to see. The screen lit up, and I nearly laughed out loud at the sheer number of notifications. Missed calls, 47. New messages, 29. The most recent one had come in just minutes ago. Emily, 10:12 p.m. Samuel. I don't know where you are. I don't know what you're doing. But please, just tell me what's happening. Please. I could almost hear the shake in her voice through the screen. Gone was the arrogance, the entitlement, the condescending dismissal of me as just a roommate. Now, she was just desperate. I leaned back against the couch, scrolling through her messages. The first few were angry, her usual brand of manipulation masked as righteous fury. Emily, 10:30 a.m. You are acting like a child. Emily, 11 a.m. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. Then came the denial. Emily, 2 p.m. You're not serious about this. You're just mad. You'll come home when you cool off. Emily, 4:15 p.m. You're being so dramatic, Sam. This is embarrassing for both of us. And then, finally, the fear. Emily, 7 p.m. You really left. Emily, 8:30 p.m. I don't know what to do. Emily, 9:45 p.m. I miss you. I set the phone down, exhaling slowly. She missed me. Not because she loved me. Not because she respected me. But because, for the first time in her life, she was the one being left behind. And I wasn't going to save her from it. I stood up, stretched, and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I'd file for divorce. And Emily? She'd finally learn what it was like to be the one forgotten. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in years. No tension, no quiet resentment, no waiting for the inevitable moment when Emily would brush me aside like an old piece of furniture. Because now, I was done waiting. I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the unread messages one last time, smirking as I saw her final attempt at damage control. Emily, 6:45 a.m. Sam. We need to talk. Emily, 7:10 a.m. I'll fix this. Just come home. Emily, 7:30 a.m. Please. Don't do this. She was unraveling, and she knew it. The confidence? Gone. The control? Slipping through her fingers like sand. For the first time in our marriage, she was powerless. I tossed my phone onto the hotel nightstand and got dressed. Today wasn't about her. It was about me. By 9 a.m., I was sitting in an attorney's office, signing the first set of divorce papers. The process would take time, but I didn't care. I wasn't rushing, wasn't desperate to run back and fix things the way she expected me to. I had spent years giving Emily every opportunity to treat me like her husband, to respect me, to see me. She had chosen to mock me instead. Now, she could deal with the consequences. As I walked out of the office and into the crisp morning air, my phone buzzed again. Emily, 9:15 a.m. I don't want to lose you. I stopped on the sidewalk, staring at the words. And for the first time, I realized I didn't feel anything. No anger. No sadness. No guilt. Just freedom. I smiled, slipped my phone back into my pocket, and kept walking. Emily had spent years treating me like I was replaceable. Now, she would finally understand what it meant to be left behind. And me? I had a whole new life waiting for me.